all of these faces. Perhaps some are familiar to you, and as you look out, you see some folks you know. Guess what? We all made it past the end of the world, according to the Mayan calendar. I'm not sure how seriously you believed all of that, but it was in the news for a long time. In fact, a good bit of the last year. There were all sorts of ideas about what might happen, but the poles didn't reverse themselves. There wasn't great calamity. We're all here. In fact, I'll bet that you haven't thought much about that in the last 3 days. You haven't even thought that we survived the end of the world since, well, sometime on Friday, whenever that was supposed to happen. Like the old Cajun gentleman, maybe you forgot to remember to remind yourself to think about it. Remembering can be a tricky thing. Remembering something from just a few days ago, or a year, or a long time ago. There's a beautiful phrase in the Christmas story, Luke's Gospel, that we've just heard. And it says this, that after much had happened that we know of the story, Mary treasured all these words and pondered them in her heart. I'd like to think that Mary had it right. Christmas is so much about remembering. Remembering. It's why we do what we do. Now, we all know remembering can be a tricky sort of thing. Sort of like the young boy who was supposed to be the innkeeper in the pageant. He had a lot of trouble remembering his lines, even though they were simple. There's no room in the inn. He got flustered at the last moment, and with Joseph pleading, he said, "All right, just come on in. We'll find a place for you." Threw everything into confusion. How about the story I heard recently from a place in which I spent some time, the backwoods of Kentucky? It seemed that there was a woman there who had stolen a can of peaches from the store. She was before the judge and was being sentenced for stealing that can of peaches from the grocery store. She told the judge, "Your Honor, there were only 3 peaches in that can." He said, "All right, I tell you what. I'm going to sentence you to a night in jail for each of those peaches. 3 peaches, 3 nights in jail." It was then that her husband jumped up, who was also in the courtroom, and said, "Your Honor, I just remembered she also stole 3 cans of peas." Remembering can be a pretty tricky thing. For instance, tonight, did you remember to turn your crock pot off before you came to church? Did you remember to get that present for Uncle Fred? And if you did you remember what you got him last year or the year before? Or maybe you've gotten him the same thing 3 years in a row. Did you remember to unplug your Christmas tree lights before you came here? Now see, I've just lost about 50 of them already. You're thinking about those things. You forgot to remember them. You see, there are those things we remember that are like mental lists, aren't they? Things we need to do, small things. They're easily forgotten. Quickly remembered, easily forgotten. Some we remember for a little bit longer, a day or so. We write them down so we don't forget them. There's that level of remembering. But then there are those things that go a bit deeper. Things that we want to remember. Oftentimes at Christmas, there are things about our children and grandchildren, aren't they? I heard a list of some things that children had said, true stories recently. Like the young girl who was learning to pray the Lord's Prayer and prayed, "Forgive us our Christmases as we forgive those who Christmas against us." If you're a mother, father, or grandparent, how can you forget something like that? Or the young boy who didn't want to be an angel in his school's Christmas production. He wanted to be a Christmas vampire. Or the toddler who had been to the zoo and saw a peacock, and he was having trouble describing what he had seen. And so he decided that it was a giant chicken giving birth to a Christmas tree. How about all of the stories that touch us maybe in a special way? About kids and presents, about baking and family meals, about singing Christmas carols, or hearing a line from a carol that strikes a chord in us, about Christmas trees and gatherings. For some of us, Christmas is long, long ago. For some of us, maybe it was last year or even this year, something that has touched you deeply. Maybe it wasn't particularly funny, but touching, and it moved you. A gift that someone gave to you, someone thinking of you. Maybe it was a picture one of those kids we laughed about had drawn for you as a gift. It could have been so many things we remember. And then there are those things that we all remember.